What's up, everyone? It's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and I'm going to open this up with just by saying this is going to be probably a long video, and it's going to be a pretty broad video as well. Simply because it's going to kind of list I'm going to list its main point at the start, and then get into a much bigger, much wider systematic problem, and then dial it back down again to my own personal one. So I'm going to get it out there at the start as well. I have a very large disdain for, I'm using air quotes here, gaming journalists. I do think some of them are the worst going. They're 99% of them that I ever read or see anywhere, they're absolutely laughable. I wonder how they have a job in this line at all. Like I said, for about 99% of them, there's the one or two articles here or there that don't qualify for that, but the majority of them I just think are a joke, and these people should not be paid to, I don't know, put two words together. But having said that, I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna start with this point anyway, and then I'm gonna go really wide, and then I'm gonna drop it back in. So up until recently, I was working in GameStop for the best part of a year, and over the last maybe like week and a half, 2 weeks, I've been talking to different people, different friends. It's like, oh, how's GameStop? It's like, well, I don't work there anymore. And it's like, oh yeah, cool. What was it like there and all that. As well as a couple of people that I'd serve a lot that I've seen outside work, and they was like, oh, how come I haven't seen you in GameStop lately? It was like, oh yeah, I don't work there anymore. It's like, oh, that's too bad. So it's to do with all that stuff, because a lot of the things that they would say to me, as this also comes with some of the other stories from videos I've seen online and stuff like that. It's like, we'll call them like horror stories and things like that. And I was just thinking, hey, I could put my own 2 cents version of that together. So between all the people that I've worked with, all the people I've served, all the friends and family, just things like that and all as well, it makes me, it's more of a whole, God, what would you call it? It's more of a, your own personal responsibility, not personal responsibility, your own moral obligation to yourself while you're working in that job. Now, what that means is, okay, that's going to sound really high and mighty, but what it actually means, as far as GameStop went, it was just something as so similar as being honest. Now, sure, someone comes in, wants to buy a game, I could just bullshit the fucking whatever I wanted. I was like, yeah, get Homefront, game of the year, this, that, and the other. Not happening. Not happening. I could do that. I was going to say religiously. I could do that reliably, and that wouldn't be a problem. But I pride myself on more than that. So I'm not just going to do that. If someone came in asking about a game that I'd heard was absolutely shit, or that I didn't like, or let's okay, here's a perfect example. I'll give you some actual examples. When Homefront: The Revolution came out, a bunch of people came in to buy it on day one. I think we sold about 20 copies on day one. And a lot of people were asking us, it's like, oh, have you played it? I was like, no, I haven't played it yet. He goes, oh, have you heard anything good about it? And he's like, to be honest, I haven't heard anything good about it. I've heard quite the opposite. I've heard bad about it. Now, I know you're supposed to sell it to the customer. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm honest. I hold myself, when it comes to gaming, I hold myself to my own higher standards. So I would either give them a non-answer or be completely honest. Now, when I'd give a non-answer, I'd say something like, "Oh, I haven't played it, but I'm not a fan of that kind of thing," or just something along those lines. But generally, I'd just be honest about it. It's like, it comes in. Let's say people asking about Uncharted 4. I was like, right, personally, I don't like the Uncharted games, but I've heard phenomenal things about this. It's getting mad reviews. We've sold tons of copies on day one, this, that, and the other. We've had like 4 copies traded in 2 months, so obviously people are keeping it because it must be good. So you get the idea of where I'm coming from and all. So I always held myself to those standards, and I found it worked a lot. I got a lot of repeat customers, specifically coming to me to ask for recommendations and things like that as well. Just recently, a guy came in. Now that I think about it, he was looking to get. He liked big games like Skyrim and Oblivion and things like that. So I was like, hey, listen, have you tried Fallout? He goes, oh, I'm going to get Fallout 4 when I get an Xbox One in a few months. And then it was, here, in the meantime, we'll get you, we didn't have Fallout 3 at the time, so it's like, right, we'll get you Fallout New Vegas. It'll get you started on the same path. And they was like, okay, you know, what about I'm looking for kind of a shooter game with really good story. It was like, right, we get you Alan Wake. That was it. And then this guy comes in a couple of months later, like maybe 2 months later, he trades in his 360, trades in these two games. I recognize the two games. I'm like, oh, hang on, I recommended these to you, didn't I? He goes, yeah, I loved both of them, but I'm finally upgrading my Xbox One. So I was like, okay, that's cool. That's a perfect example. I've also had loads of people. I'm not doing this to toot my own horn, by the way. I'm just, it's more of a story for people, just so we don't all come across as scumbags. Sure, 98% of the people working in that, well, 98% of the people I interacted with that work in GameStop Ireland were fucking scum. 98% of them, not all of them. Rob, if you hear this one's for you. Ash, if you hear this one's for you. You two people are cool. So yeah, you get the idea at least anyway, right? So let's see, there was another example I was going to bring up, but I've just completely forgot about it. So either way, we'll completely ignore that bit that I forgot about it anyway. Oh, Overwatch. Yeah, so I got Overwatch on day one, and a couple of days after, maybe about a week after Overwatch came out, someone came in and he was looking to buy Overwatch. He asked me, have I played it? I was like, yeah, I play it for about 6 hours every night. It's literally all I play lately. He goes, okay, is it any good? And I just look at him and was like, man, if it's the only game I'm playing for 6 hours a night, from literally when I get off work to go to bed, what do you think? He goes, yeah, good point. So you get the idea. This brings me to the next point is, because I've had a lot of repeat customers and ones you build up a rapport with, and just they're just sometimes they just come in just to talk to you because you've got very similar interests, not just gaming but just similar interests. I've had people that those kinds of people have recommended. It's like, oh, hey, listen, I'm looking for a game. What do I do? What could you recommend? It's like, well, here, listen, go into GameStop, ask for, and then he'd ask for me, and then he'll sort you out because he gives good recommendations and all that. So I find that it benefited me in the job as well as it actually benefited me just in person, because I have a standard that I put myself to and I stuck to it. So I'm pretty happy with that anyway. Now, the video is, like I said, this video is going to go on for a long time, so I'm getting off topic a little bit anyway. This brings me to the rest of it anyway. This is where it's going to broaden out into a much bigger point, because if you remember a while back, this was a couple of years ago at this point, the internet and gaming related sites and news weren't what they were today, but they were still growing. There was good names out there, but they just weren't where they are today anyway. So if you remember a couple of years ago, a guy named Robert Florence, who worked at Eurogamer at the time, he basically got sick and tired of what was going on in the industry. And he wrote a big, massive article on Eurogamer, basically criticizing, I'm going to use the air quotes here, games journalists and games journalism, and how they were basically sold to the highest bidder, or at least how they appeared to be sold to the highest bidder. Now, the problem is, the editor at the time, whoever was running Eurogamer, I've Kotaku stuff later on to get to in this video, so that's why it's getting in my mind. So whoever was the editor at Eurogamer at the time, what they actually did was they amended his post to not look as bad, basically. And what happened anyway is basically what he saw this and was like, right, here, listen, I'm speaking honestly, and if you're amending my article just so it doesn't make you look like scum and it doesn't make the industry look like scum, even though they are probably and possibly acting like scum, I quit. That's it. So he left Eurogamer because of it anyway, and that was a long time ago. A lot of people reported, a lot of places, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, all the other outlets, the media and news outlets and all as well, they all picked up on it as well. There was a big scandal at the time. It's all focused on a couple of specific things, which I'm actually going to get to now in a minute in this video, regardless. So we all know that websites and magazines, well, magazines were more prevalent back in the day, more so than now. But there are still magazines out there. There's less of them and less different variety. But you get the idea. And we all know that all of those, especially magazines to an extent, depend on ads and ad revenue. Now, the reason for that is obviously with websites, as soon as someone goes onto the website, ads are displayed. We're not talking about ad block or anything. Just in principle, as soon as you get to a website, the ad is displayed. Whereas in a magazine, the ad is there regardless if it sells or not. So they need the quality of the content and the amount of content to sell the magazine to get those ads out there. So it's all a sales number. It's all a traffic/sales numbers. That's all that matters. And that's what they see when they talk ad revenue and they're talking to advertisers and things like that. And the fact that websites and magazines depend on ads so much that it opens up the ability and the unfortunate ability for them to be influenced essentially by publishers, by PR spokesperson, even by advertisers. Now, the big thing is I'm not saying this goes on all the time. I'm not saying it doesn't go on all the time. So that's the thing. But because there's so much we don't see. But when it does come to light and it does get exposed, the whole industry, every media outlet, every writer, every blogger, every reviewer, every whatever you want to call them, the whole thing is called into question and it's called into doubt. And the fact that when one of these stories pops up, we remember all the other ones and it amplifies all that and it's all ingrained into our mind. And we become cynical motherfuckers. And I don't blame them because these companies, at the end of the day, these people are out to get your money. That's it. They're out to get your money in some way, shape, or form. Now, I'm not specifically talking about reviewers or websites or whatever. They are, in a way, they're trying to get you to click on their site. They're trying to get you to believe in their opinions or whatever and, become a repeat user. So that's all, at the end of the day, you are the consumer. That you're the consumer. So the people everyone is targeting you, be it for your time, be it for your clicks, be it for your money, be it for your investment into their product or magazine, whatever. It's that's all it is. And that all throws whenever one of these is exposed, it throws massive amounts of doubt over any previous, say, review or whatever. Now, maybe this review was a positive one. Maybe it was a negative one. But at the same time, you could think, was this influenced? Did they just hide it really well? Or maybe they weren't found out. So the whole thing, and like I said it already, is the fact that this happens consistently. It happens over and over. Not a couple of months go by almost every year where there's another story on something like this. There's another review. There's another person fired. There's another big article about things like that. And it makes it harder to grin and bear every single time it comes up. So obviously, websites need to cover games. The more info and the more articles they have on games, the more ads get displayed. So that brings all that up there. Big games like, say, Call of Duty, Battlefield, anything with a big name, whenever there's new news for it, obviously coverage is going to spike and traffic is going to spike. So you've got more hits on your website, hence more ads. So obviously the incentive for websites and things like that is there to actually be on the forefront of all this, to do what they can do, be it questionable or not, to actually get as many relevant clicks and all in. Some places use clickbait, some rehash articles. Kotaku are a nightmare for rehashing articles, just republishing articles. That goes to my whole thing. They're just it fits in with like I was saying earlier, that gaming journalism I consider almost laughable, especially. I hate saying this, especially Kotaku, because they just feel like nothing but bloggers. They're actually some of the most opinionated blogger, whatever you want to call them, rather than games journalists. They're probably not going to like that and get a chance to ever hear it, but that's the way it comes across, so what can I say? Anyway, so we've covered the whole thing with, big games and more coverage equals more hits, equals more ads, equals more revenue and all as well. So this forces websites, in my opinion at least anyway, to be more willing to bend the rules or, play by some possibly sketchy rules set forth by a publisher or developer or something like that. And here's a couple of perfect examples. If a few years ago you remember, I think this was about 2008 ish, in around there anyway. If you remember the whole story about Jeff Gertzman. Now, Jeff Gertzman used to be he used to be the editor, I believe it was. I don't think he was just a reviewer. I think he was actually the editor at the time, so he was pretty important for GameSpot. And he gave Kane and Lynch on Xbox 360 and PS3 and PC, he gave that a review of 6 out of 10. 2 weeks later, he was fired because he gave it a bad review. And it's not just because he gave it a bad review. Because he gave it a bad review, IDOS actually threatened to pull all advertising from GameSpot. IDOS was obviously a big deal at the time. So they threatened to pull all their advertising. So let's just say that's a 25% chunk of their advertising. Imagine you're a big company and someone who's given you millions of dollars or millions of euro or whatever comes up to you and says, you shat all over one of my games. I'm taking my 25% of your budget. I'm taking that 10 million I give you for advertising and I'm going somewhere else unless you do something about it. And they fired him because of that. That's a lot of bullshit. And whoever was reassigned to give the Kane and Lynch review redo it after he left, it scored higher. So I think IDOS were satisfied with the whole thing. But it's not just, the thing is, it's so underhanded and so dastardly that it's not always so obvious as that. Sometimes there's gifts, sometimes there is other incentives, sometimes there's actual physical gifts. Sometimes there's like paid trips and things like that as well. There's expenses covered, there's loads of stuff. One of the ones that's a big issue is, if you remember, just before Mass Effect 3 came out, Jessica Chobot from IGN I think she was still with IGN at the time. She was also working on G4 TV when that was still around, but she was made into an NPC in the game. If I remember right, it has her face and she voices the NPC. If I remember right, it's been a while. I did a little bit of research on that particular thing, but I didn't get that exact thing. I don't think it matters. Like, you see her face, you hear the voice. She was basically made into an NPC. Now, at the time, IGN, G4, and Jessica herself actually all made 3 separate announcements. I think IGN obviously made it on there. G4 TV, I can't remember where they made their announcement. And Jessica Chobot actually put one on her blog, I believe it was. And all 3 of them said the same thing, that she won't be reviewing the game for any of those. She won't be reviewing it for IGN, she won't be reviewing it for G4 TV, and she won't be reviewing it just as herself on her own personal blog or whatever. And that's all well and good. That's a decent thing, because at the same time it can show us, like, hang on, that could be really, really fucking biased if that's the case. Because they could, okay, we've immortalized you in a game, please give our game a good review, especially because Mass Effect 3 turned out to be shit. So that's a whole other story. But it brings up another problem, okay? That whole problem is when she's a writer. She writes articles, she writes blog posts, things like that, all for all these websites, for IGN and for herself and all as well. She was obviously a presenter and a host of the TV shows and some of the videos and all on there too. So automatically, regardless of specific title or specific qualifications, she's the face of, or she used to be the face of IGN essentially in G4 TV. So people would see her and assume she's not just a pretty face that they're going to put on the front of it. Now, officially, she's not a reviewer, she's not a writer, she's a host/entertainer. And she pointed that out at the time as well. Because, well, I'm not a reviewer, I'm a host and an entertainer. Most people don't know that. Most people will see her as a prominent figure of IGN or G4 TV, just of the gaming community, and they will assume she knows what she's talking about. I'm not saying she doesn't know what she's talking about, but it's just taken into context with the whole thing. So when they see her there, they see her talking about Mass Effect, or they see her talking about whatever, despite her not officially being a reviewer or anything like that, it's like, okay, maybe she's read out 10 reviews a week, or 10 reviews a month that other people have wrote and all. Well, it's basically the same thing. Most people, not myself, most people are going to see that whole issue that could be there. Or, well, most people won't see the issue and they'll just see the fact that she's doing all this. And that's all intentional, by the way. When you look at places like IGN, G4 TV, everyone who does kind of thing, Eurogamer are very guilty of it as well. All they do is they just throw the girl that works there, Aoife, they just throw her on front of as many videos as they can. And if it was guys making these videos, they get 10% of the views. It's the same deal. It's the same deal as this. It's marketing. So they know exactly what they're doing. Now the problem is that since she was listed as a host and an entertainer, where does she draw the line? She still wrote some of these, whatever reviews. She wrote these posts. She wrote these blogs, whatever. They're all gaming related. So where does that draw the line, It's only going to draw the line somewhere when it suits them. It feels like it's going to be a double standard with just rules that could just bend at any point in time given the situation to suit whoever. But that's just me. But another good example of the whole sketchiness when it comes to marketing. This one fits more with the whole IDOS GameSpot thing. If you remember Games Planet a while back, I don't think Games Planet are even still going. They might be, I could be wrong, but I haven't even looked into it lately. I do remember a long time ago that they were invited to a Call of Duty event by Activision back in Santa Monica, I think it was. And that was a long time ago. And I think it was in around the Black Ops 1 time, possibly. But I was going to say Sony. Activision were going to pay for the travel. They were going to pay for the accommodation, the hotels, things like that. There were outdoor activities planned. They were all going to be covered and the expenses covered. And other expenses would be paid for as well, which presumably is things like food, drink, smaller transport that doesn't count, like, big flights and all that kind of thing as well. So Games Planet received this invitation and they wrote a small bit of an article about the invitation they got. And I was like, okay, hang on. Given the fact that such a gratuitous invitation is sent our way just to look at a game and report on a game, the possibility of our opinion on the game being swayed by all this is too strong, and as such, we're not going to accept this invitation. And we never would accept a similar invitation. So Activision weren't like that, and within the next few days, Games Planet were contacted by one of the Activision PR people themselves, and they said literally because of the article, there was a couple of arranged interviews and things like that with some of the Black Ops military advisor, and I think there was someone else in there too, and all of that stuff that was already set and already sorted was cancelled because of the article. So you can see that the publishers are willing to kind of punish people who go against their, I won't say unruly, it's more so their unjust wishes. Like, for example, if not accepting a big thing like that because you're worried whoever would, it would contaminate your opinion, and saying is, listen, we're not going to do it because it could contaminate our opinion, and then punishing you because of that, that's a lot of bullshit if you ask me. I think Games Planet did the right thing in that situation. Anyway, that's all that. There are a couple of other contributing factors at least. Anyway, this next part is very hard to find a specific amount because it's something not just in journalism, but just in almost any field is obviously I won't say a close guarded secret, but it's kind of a hush hush kind of thing, which is absolutely ridiculous. But supposedly the pay for writers and editors, even up to editors and things like that, is absolutely shit. That's supposedly, at least anyway. I don't know how that's changed over the last few years, or I don't know if it still rings true. I don't know if it's just one or two specific companies, but it seemed to be overall the general consensus was people get paid shitty. Now, having said that, everyone believes to get paid shitty. So there's people out there who do basically nothing and make six figures a year and they think they don't get paid enough. So yeah, you get the idea. But apparently the pay conditions are absolutely crap. The working conditions, the unreasonable expectations that are in almost every industry are just over the top, apparently. Now, like I said, it's in almost every industry, but you couple that with low pay and unreasonable expectations and all as well. The kind of thing like, I hate the whole idea of crunch time and unpaid overtime. That's all a load of bollocks. Like that's bullshit. No one should have to deal with that. If you're making $9.15 minimum wage an hour here in Ireland, or if you're making 10 times that, you shouldn't have to do all that crap. It's just it's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane that even the companies and people are expected to do this. That's a whole other issue. So we're coming to the end of the big section. There's going to be I think it's two more main points I want to talk about, and then we'll hone it back in on the actual one because I know this video has gone on for way too long. So I'm sure you all remember Doritosgate. I know everyone just throws gate on anything that's a scandal or an issue lately, but I'm sure everyone remembers Doritosgate. And Doritosgate, if you don't remember or you weren't around for it, because the internet wasn't what it is today back then, and this was only a few years ago. I think it was 2012 if I remember right. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was 2012 when Halo 4 came out. There was a big, massive marketing push for Halo 4. It was in around the time when other companies like food and drink and snack companies were getting in on this. It was like nowadays you still have Monster giving Call of Duty double XP with every can, or with certain cans and things like that. Back then, you could not look anywhere. Mountain Dew had their gamer fuel. I think they had that all the way back to like Halo 2 or Halo 3. But I mean, you'd have all these places, these games review sites, these games review channels, whatever. They would all be just showing off stuff like this, and they would have actual advertisements in all the marketing, all that stuff as well. I'm going to put up a picture here as well anyway. So this is the infamous Doritosgate picture that's burned in every gamer's soul and mind at this point. This is basically the straw that broke the camel's back. When you're talking about Halo 5 and you see the smallest thing for Halo 5 is stuck in the back with Mountain Dew plastered all over it, literally takes up, I won't say half the screen, but there's one side of the screen is dedicated to a non-gaming product. Is dedicated, you've got all the Mountain Dew there, you've got all the Doritos there. With huge companies like that pumping severe amounts of money into this kind of marketing, do you really think that it's going to be fair and just, especially with all this other stuff we talk about, the history of all that as well? And you think all this, with this kind of money and this kind of sponsorship and this kind of weight to be thrown around, especially with a big game like Halo, and it wasn't just Halo, it was Halo 4, it was Microsoft basically making their own Halo game for the first time, and yeah, it was a big deal. And because of all that, it got pretty damn sketchy and pretty damn questionable. So that's one of the ones that broke the camel's back. But it goes, here's another one that's going to show where advertisers think they can throw more weight around than they have, and with more power that they think they have. This one was about 15 years ago. It was just after the turn of the millennium. There was a company called 3DO. They're pretty much not around anymore. But there was also a magazine called GamePro, which I also don't think is around anymore. But 3DO released a game called Portal Runner, and the people in GamePro reviewed it, and it got a bad review because it was supposed to be pretty shit. Now, the president of 3DO at the time, Trip Hawkins, he actually wrote them a strongly worded email. He wrote GamePro a strongly worded email. And he basically just said, effective immediately, we're cutting back the massive amounts of advertising we give GamePro simply because you wrote a shitty review of what you considered to be a bad game. And here's the kicker, right? He actually said, without checking in with a major advertiser first. So basically, Trip Hawkins said, hang on, you savaged this game. And you savaged this game, you reviewed this game like you were paid to do, you were hired to do and paid to do, and you did your job and did not throw in, you did not get the opinion or the fact, well, not the fact, the opinion or, the next course of action from an advertiser who should have nothing to do with the game, or nothing to do with the actual quality of the review, just because you put in so much advertising? No, that's a load of shit if you ask me. How much power does Trip Hawkins actually think he has as the external advertiser? Now, Technically, he does have a bit of power, unofficially, because he has, he has a large budget. But because he has their big advertising budget to spend on GamePro, he shouldn't be able to try use that as leverage and as a weapon and just wield that to get what he wants. They make a bad game, he has to deal with that. He can't just go, oh, I'm going to pull all those millions just because. That's a load of bullshit, and I don't know. There's a reason why they went the way they went, so I'm not too broken up about that one. But there's another similar story as well, actually, when it comes to Kotaku. And a while back, there was an unannounced service from Sony. I think it was for the PS4. I don't remember which specific service it was. It could have been for the PS3 as well, but I'm pretty sure it was for the PS4. I could be wrong either way. Now, Kotaku got wind of this through their own channels and their own hard work and all that as well. And they were going to do an article about it, a big piece about the whole thing before it was even officially announced. And Sony contacted them. And they tried their hardest to persuade and just to try their hardest to sweet talk Kotaku into not actually posting the article. Now, good for Kotaku. I'm not a big fan of them because, like I said earlier, they're almost a joke. Like, they're just opinionated bloggers. I'm no angel myself. I'm just some dude in a room talking into a microphone. But you get the idea. Anyway, what was I saying? So good on Kotaku for actually posting this article anyway. So they still went out and they still actually posted this article despite Sony trying to incentivize them not to do it and persuading them not to do it and all of that. So they actually, they posted the article, and the senior director of corporate communications from Sony, his name is David Caracker. I can't remember. I don't know how to pronounce that properly. Anyway, he emailed Kotaku's editor at the time. I don't think it was Stephen Totilo, but I could be wrong. It was a while back. I don't really keep paying attention to the who's in charge kind of thing. But he basically blamed Kotaku for reporting on this, and he specifically went out of the way to call them out for not, here's more air quotes, cooperating with Sony, and that because of their non-cooperation and all this as well, for the foreseeable future, all Kotaku interviews, press kits, etc. have been cancelled, and that basically all Kotaku's specific press information has been cancelled, and the only information Kotaku will be receiving is any news source from Sony that is already out in the public domain. So basically, when Sony announced something, that's when Kotaku will know about it. That's how it was. Now, that may have changed. That was a while back, but it could have changed anyway as well. So the problem that this is where we're going to hone it back in anyway. And the problem is that because basically both of them need each other. Magazines and websites need big game coverage to draw it all in. Reviewers, sites, magazines, they need big news to bring in the traffic, bring in the sales, bring in the clicks for ad revenue. So the problem is they might want to bend a rule here or there just to get that news, maybe even an exclusive bit of news that will get people to get their product, their website, their magazine, whatever. Publishers need these sites and magazines because if they don't promote their games all the time, like release new bits of information, new screenshots, new videos every, maybe once a month, every 2 months, something like that. If they only show their games off at E3 once a year, or maybe like 3 or 4 times at once at every big show throughout the year, they're only going to show little bits of info. It's not going to be enough, and because everyone won't be following all that, it's just not going to do it for people. Now, it won't be enough, and people don't go to, say, the Call of Duty website just for their Call of Duty news. People don't go to the Battlefield website for their Battlefield news. People go to places like XboxAchievements.com, or they go to PlayStationTrophies.com, they go to Eurogamer, they go to Polygon, they go to Kotaku, they go to YouTube, they go to all these other places that have multiple sources from all this different stuff all on there, because it has the appearance of being less biased. Now, like I said, it's the appearance, because whether it actually is biased or not is a whole other story. Maybe, like I said earlier in the video, maybe it's just hidden, maybe it's just not found out. There's so many questions. There's so many questions to ask about anyway. So they go to all these multifaceted sites for all that stuff. If a big game releases info only on their personal site, it's either going to be completely missed, save for a few people, or it's going to have a significantly lower amount of coverage, and that is not a good thing when you're pumping millions and millions into a game and you're releasing info in one place and hoping that everyone just gets it because. So at that point, the companies have to try in what is probably justified in their mind to go the extra mile to get good coverage for their game, and that lies the problem. Now, so that's the big, really wide aspect of it. So I'm dragging it back in. I'm dragging it back into what I wanted to talk about, and that is, well, I've pretty much covered it, but that's why I wanted to talk about all that as well, and that's why I stuck to my guns myself, and I stuck to my own high standard that I kept myself, and that I was completely honest at the time. So I always felt like I did myself a justice. I did the people I was dealing with a justice, even if it wasn't GameStop's perfect sales scenario. I was excellent at that job, by the way. Like, almost every week I was in the top 10 for the entire region, and that's like 20 something stores. Then it has every individual person, and I was personally in there, so I could do my job damn well. And I feel like a lot of people didn't come to me just because I could do my job damn well. I feel like a lot of people came to me simply because I was honest, and the way I handled everything, the way I went about everything, and I did my best. I did my best in the standards I was set for at the time, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So this video has gone on way, it's gone on like twice as long as I originally anticipated it to go on for. So I'm going to end it here anyway. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of anything in this video, especially if, I'm sure you go to that one store, or you go to that one, game shop or game or whatever branch or whatever company you deal with and all. I'm sure you've got maybe that one person in there that is truly honest and truly brutally honest, even if it's for the detriment of themselves, basically the detriment of their company they're working for. Let me know if you have that person, what your opinion on them, and chances are you're going to say the same thing I've been saying in this video, that if this person is honest with you and they're dead true about it, just because you're going to respect it more, and you're going to believe that person more, and you're actually going to legitimately consider their opinion and their recommendations or something like that. Let me know all that. If you have anything like that in the comment section below, if you appreciate that kind of stuff, let me know all that anyway. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter, details in the description below. Thanks for watching this extremely long video, and I'm going to try to keep them separate from now on because I don't like them going this long anyway. But see you in the rest of the videos in my channel.